They're normally arrested, there's an investigation, and before they go to court, they will interview them to try and see if they can get any further information that might assist them in being able to locate their country of origin, and also to determine whether they are economic migrants or asylum seekers. And then there's separate procedures that happens depending on what they answer, but normally they are charged, and once they are charged, they're taken to court the very next day or soon thereafter, within the custody limits that they've got. And then depending on the situation, they're normally detained in prison until they're deported.
What happens to economic migrants once they return to their own countries? Do they face charges there?
I'm not aware of the legal issues that they may have in those countries. I understand that Morocco doesn't really prosecute them or has anything in place to prosecute them. But I can't really comment on that. But what they probably will try is carry on. Unfortunately, the Strait of Gibraltar is a place where there's a focal point of economic migrants. They meet, there's many gangs. Unfortunately, in the news we've heard that there's been a situation locally, and unfortunately it's becoming too common an occurrence. But they normally go back to the countries. Some try and make it again, I suppose, and others will carry on until they get to Spain. The aim is Spain, not Gibraltar. It's just when we have bad weather or they fall into difficulties that Gibraltar unfortunately has to take up from any assistance that they may need.
How long does the extradition process take?
It all depends on how much information they've given the Royal Gibraltar Police, how much of that information they're able to verify with the country of origin that they come from, and how quickly the consular support or embassy support via the UK are able to come back. If they're from Morocco, it doesn't take them very long, and indeed I understand that RGP does try and deport these individuals within 28 days from their detention.
Some of the migrants that land in Gibraltar are children. Are they afforded any special care, particularly after the harrowing time that they've had in crossing the Strait? Are they given any health care, any psychological or emotional care at all?
Well, automatically, depending on their age, if they're younger than 14, they won't be detained. If they're older than 14, our legislation does have provision to have them detained. The same as any child or of that age, there is power legislation to ensure that those people can be incarcerated. The key word here is that they're not prisoners, they're detained because we do not have other facilities to keep them in sort of a secure place. But it's also to ensure that they can follow through that procedure. Now, as I understand it, once they're there, it does take some time before they're able to locate who the identity of these people are. However, normally they do actually have a social worker that's appointed. The social worker will look at the well-being of the child, and if they are not detained, they are sort of supported in the way of housing, healthcare. They're put in one of the homes here. But if they are between 16 and 14, normally they will get deported. But there is a package of support there. They do have a social worker. If they are detained or if they are sort of housed by the care agency, they will get support from, if they're, for example, the Moroccan and they're devout Muslims, they will have an imam visit them. So they do have a network of support to help them, because situations that they're in, they probably come from a very bad situation to start off with, and then to be sort of in the middle of the Straits, it must be very, very difficult for them.
In your opinion, how badly does Gibraltar need a juvenile detention centre?
In my own personal perspective, and this is my own personal perspective, I do think that there is scope for a juvenile detention centre. Myself and other colleagues of mine have sort of made this point known, and this is probably the first time that I'm going to say it publicly. Whether it's priority, I don't know. We do have a lot of things that currently the government will have to be worried about in light of COVID and Brexit. But it is something that I would submit is something that we do need. It doesn't have to be a very big centre, but the fact is that there are many juveniles that are kept by the care agency in their care. And unfortunately it's a very slippery slope, because they don't have powers to detain them, so really they're free agents. So sometimes a lot of these people that have a lot of social economic issues as well, do tend to reoffend, recommit offences, and ultimately perhaps sending them to prison might not be in the first instance the ideal situation, but there needs to be some sort of halfway gap between that and prison.